My name's Rob Broughton and I've been working here at the museum for around 3 years doing restoration work on aircraft like this and other systems in the museum. What we have here is a very old Hercules C-130A, just the cockpit, which we're slowly restoring. We now have all of the cockpit lights working, including the overhead lights and the instrument panel lights. The power is not on at the moment, otherwise I could show you. We're also replacing the windows. As you can see, they're very badly damaged from significant exposure to the weather. The aircraft has been in the sunshine and rain for a very long time before we managed to get hold of it. So at the moment it looks a bit of a wreck because we've got bits and pieces pulled out everywhere while we sort out where the corrosion problems are and to get at the windows. We expect to have it in a display ready condition probably in around 6 or 9 months. It depends on the availability of supplies and of course our own hours. This is the Navigator's position. We have a radar display here and the radar control panel over here, and there are also various other instruments. There's a repeater for the radar display on the top of the pilot's console there, the orange screen. We would love to be able to get that working, but it's a little bit too dangerous to be trying to run the radar. The flight engineer sits in this seat here, and he or she normally controls all of the radio equipment on this centre console, plus controls up here for fuel transfer between various tanks and that sort of thing. The pilot sits on the left, and that's the captain of the aircraft. Whatever that person says goes. The rest of the crew follow him or her. The co-pilot sits here. Now, each of the pilot and co-pilot have specific responsibilities while they're in the air. The co-pilot, for instance, is responsible for raising and lowering landing gear. Both the pilot and co-pilot will act together to control the throttles, the engine power. They're the levers there with the yellow numbers on them. The levers to the left of that are to control propeller pitch. The centre panel there, with all the meters on it, are all related to the 4 engines. So we have things like fuel temperature, fuel pressure, oil pressure, and temperature, all of those sorts of things that you want to know about the operating engines. Revolutions per minute for each engine. In front of the pilot, there are the flight instruments that are used to show the position of the aircraft and the attitude of the aircraft. And most of those are duplicated on the co-pilot's side, so they can, either the pilot or the co-pilot knows exactly what's going on with the aircraft at all times. There's a huge range of electrical panels and circuit breakers and fuses and that sort of thing because of the multitude of radio and radar equipment down below in the bay under our feet. Also for all of the instruments and lights, there are separate circuit breakers for all of those. So there's a high emphasis on electrical safety within the whole cockpit.
Is it quite a challenge to refurbish?
It is, because parts are not available. We would, for instance, love to be able to replace the windows with original windows for this aircraft, but they're no longer available. The other thing is, because it's been sitting out on the tarmac at an airport for a very long time, there's significant corrosion on the outside of the fuselage, which will take a lot of effort to repair to the point where we could make it weatherproof. All of these things take a great deal of time.
Where would this plane have been used in, say, Vietnam? What sort of role would it have played?
We actually have one of the original aircrew very kindly donated his logbook for this aircraft to the museum, so we're able to see exactly where it went. It performed carrier duties cargo duties flying between Darwin and Vung Tau. We also had the aircraft flying Lyndon B. Johnson's cars around the country when he was out here visiting back in the 1960s, I think. The aircraft filled multiple of roles, but it was a regular traveller to Vietnam during the war, bringing Australian soldiers into the country and taking them home again, of course. Also equipment and supplies for those troops on the ground.
And in terms of a carrying capacity, how many soldiers could it carry?
It can carry about 84, I think, from memory, in the main cabin of the aircraft. The seats can also be taken out, so it can take a reasonable amount of cargo. It was used in multiple roles, including providing a platform for parachutists to jump out of. I don't know that role was ever performed in Vietnam.
Is it a difficult plane to fly?
It's not. It's quite easy in terms of taking off and landing because of the low windows. It's almost unique in any aircraft. The pilot and the co-pilot are able to see exactly what's on the ground ahead of them. So it was very easy to control during takeoff and landing from that visibility point of view. And of course, it's particularly important if you were trying to use an unprepared landing strip. Once you're in the air, the aircraft is stable. It travels normally at around about between 30,000 and 34,000 feet. There is an autopilot. Once the aircraft has reached its operational ceiling, generally speaking, the crew are able to sit back with their feet up until it was time to prepare for landing. The aircraft included quite extensive facilities for crew comfort, water urn, coffee machines down here, which we haven't managed to replace fully, all sorts of bits and pieces like that. There was also a small galley in the main cabin that could be used to store food for the passengers and to provide some basic heating facilities. I've never been in command of this aircraft, but I have flown in the co-pilot's seat of a similar aircraft for about half an hour. The crew was kind enough to let me have a practice, and that certainly reinforced my point of view that the aircraft was very easy to control in flight.
In your own military background?
Not an extensive background. I served for 6 years in the Citizens Air Force, which is sort of a part-time organisation, based at RAF Williams, which was the old Laverton. We worked extensively on Neptunes, the P2 maritime surveillance aircraft. That was about the extent of my direct military experience. Later in life, I spent a lot of time working on defence projects with various contractors and various customers. Certainly not all aircraft related.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.